Hey Star Wars fans, thanks for checking out another episode of Star Wars Doctrine. If you're new here, basically what we do is we talk about everything there is to talk about in our favorite galaxy far, far away. This week there's been a lot of fun stuff coming out about Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which is only a couple months away now. Director and writer J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio have been out and about doing lots of interviews, obviously getting asked lots of questions about the upcoming movie, which has led to lots of fun speculation and topics to talk about. And I wanted to specifically talk in this video about some things that Chris Terrio had to say. So let me go right into reading some of those. He basically said that The Rise of Skywalker, really, when they were writing the movie and the script, came down to two questions. And that's what The Rise of Skywalker is all about, just two questions. This is what he says. He says, one of the questions is a simple one. Who is Rey? He says, which is a question that people not only wonder about quite literally, but wonder about in a spiritual sense. How can Rey become the spiritual heir to the Jedi? We kept coming back to who is Rey, and how can we give the most satisfying answer to that, not only factually, because obviously people are interested in whether there's more to be learned of Rey's story, but more importantly, who is she as a character? How will she find the courage and will and inner strength and power to carry on what she's inherited? So that's the first question, and I think there's a lot to that. It sounds pretty simple up front, but the details he gives got my mind turning and spinning a lot. Because one thing that, and I know a lot of you guys have expressed this on the page and things like that, that there's kind of a disconnect with Rey. Obviously, the obvious answer is, well, who are her parents? We don't know a lot about where she came from. And I think that gets talked about more than anything with the sequels. And obviously there was theories after theories before Episode 7, after Episode 7, even now after Episode 8, even with Kylo telling her that she's nobody and came from nobody. There's still theories going around. And JJ has very clearly said already that by the end of this, you will know. Daisy Ridley also said that you'll know who Rey's parents are. So I think that is a big part of this. But, and don't get me wrong, I'm totally excited to find out more about that. But one thing that Chris Terrio said that got me more excited than actually that was talking about that there's more to find out about Rey's character. And hear me out on this, because one thing when I look back through Episode 7 and Episode 8 that I have had a hard time with when it comes to Rey, don't get me wrong, I love her character. I do think that she was starting to get developed a lot in Episode 8, but there's still this disconnect to me because I'm still trying to figure out what drives Rey. Like, I know that she wants to learn more about her family, but if she really does believe Kylo that her family was nobody important and that she doesn't have a place in this story, what's driving her to keep going? Why is she really fighting for the Resistance? If she was so content back on Jakku, I mean, at least she believed she was content and that there wasn't much more out for her than waiting for her parents, why is she still going on this mission? It was like in Episode 7, she had this character arc of, okay, she's going to eventually realize that, what like Maz said, everything's in front of her, not behind her on Jakku. But I don't really feel like she had a moment of realization yet with that. I think even when she went to find Luke, she was still holding on to, like, who are my parents? And maybe that's the only reason she was in this. I don't think she really looks at herself as special yet. And I think in the comics that have recently come out about Rey, she seems to believe that the only reason there's anything special about her right now is because she's holding Luke's lightsaber. Maybe that was between 7 and before 8. And maybe in 8 she starts to realize that, like, yeah, I have this force and I can use it, and Luke helped her realize that. But I just want to know more about, like, her character arc, and why is she fighting for this? Is it because she just hates Kylo and hates what he does, or hates the First Order? Because it didn't seem like the First Order was really affecting her a whole lot out on Jakku. Whereas, like, Luke, he grew up, like, not liking the Empire. He even says that in Episode 4, like, that he doesn't like the Empire, but there's nothing he can do about it until he finds his opportunity. Rey, it's like, I haven't really heard her say anything, I guess in Episode 8 she does say a little bit, but I'm still waiting to find out a little bit more about her, what drives her, who is she, why is she doing what she's doing. don't get me wrong, like I said, I think episode 8 developed her in a lot of ways, but past her parents, past wondering where she fits in, I want to know what drives her and who she is as a person. Like, there's just so much that we haven't found out yet about Rey, and I think that the fact that they're focusing on that's going to be really good. Also, obviously, I'm excited to find out more about her parents, because personally, I do believe Kylo was lying, and I know, it's about 50-50 on what people think on that. I'm okay either way. I'll be happy. I'll be fine either way. It's not going to make or break the story for me, but I just feel like he was lying. I feel like he was being deceitful. But I guess we'll find out. So that was the big number one question from Chris Terrio on what's driving episode 9. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say, or what your thoughts are, picking apart kind of what Chris Terrio said. So definitely let me know in the comments on that question. The second question, which might be even more compelling, intriguing than the first question, says, he continues, the second one is, how strong is the Force? It sounds a little simple, but actually when you get down to it, that is a sort of Zen koan that we would really meditate on. Not literally in yoga poses or anything, but like we would discuss, what is the Force and how strong is the Force? Those two things were really important. So Chris Terrio and JJ actually are having these deep discussions about what is the Force. And the first thing it makes me think of is like, they want to test the limits of the Force. What can the Force do? How far can we take this? It makes me think they're about to pull some really bold moves in episode 9 and showing us things that have never been done before with the Force. And if you go into Legends, there is tons of stuff that you could find. Force powers like Nihilus eating planets and just crazy, ridiculous powers out there. And to see what they're going to bring into canon is really exciting. Obviously, there's a million things they can pick from, and obviously things that they can come up with on their own, but to see some of the new stuff they've already brought into this, like Kylo and his Force Freeze, was definitely a new power to me. When I saw that on screen, I was like, holy cow, a really cool one. But testing the limits of that, it's going to be interesting. It makes me wonder, if they mean just Rey and Kylo, or if something I thought of almost immediately was Force Ghosts and what they can do. We already saw Yoda use lightning in episode 8 to strike this tree, which I never would have dreamed that Force Ghosts could pull something off like that before, but perhaps they're gonna test the waters on what those guys can do with the Force. Maybe they'll be able to affect the physical world a little more, especially Luke. I think that if any Force Ghost should be able to do some new powerful stuff we've never seen, it should be Luke. I think that we haven't gotten to see his grand full power on screen. I mean, I definitely liked him be able to project himself across the galaxy. That was incredible. That was a new Force power. But to see what he could do as a Force Ghost, let's add something new. I think that would be really fun. Obviously, there's going to be a fine line where fans are either going to love it or hate it, or depending on how they do it, whether it'll, flow well with the rest of the saga. But I definitely think that that's a possibility. The world between worlds is something that gets brought up a lot when people are discussing what's going to happen in episode 9. Palpatine, there's definitely things with Palpatine that you could say would be new limits of the Force, especially if he's going to be back in person, in the actual flesh, which I still have a hard time believing. I kind of think that he was dead in episode 6. So him being back in the flesh, I don't know, we'll see, but they definitely, have confirmed he's going to be back in some way. So it'll be interesting to see if that has anything to do with the powers of the Force. This Force bond that Kylo and Rey have, I thought about a lot too, and supposedly that's something they're going to explore a little more in this movie. So perhaps they find ways through the Force with the Force bond that are new and things like that. I've personally been hoping that Kylo and Rey will both, at the beginning of the movie be off kind of Kylo looking more into Sith lore, searching down more Vader stuff, hopefully his lightsaber, and we already know the mask's going to be back in the movie. It'd be cool if he heads to Vader's castle or to somewhere with more Sith relics and places that he can learn more about the dark side of the Force that can help him grow more powerful. And maybe he can find some old Sith secrets and Force powers that never were there before, that we haven't seen on screen before, I should say. And same thing with Rey. I hope she finds a way into the Jedi archives or visits an old Jedi temple or even Coruscant and finds a way to learn things that, secrets that through holocrons and things like that we didn't know were there. And that, to me, that would be a really interesting plot line and a really fun thing to see on screen. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, but I did think that that finding out what the Force is capable of is just an exciting concept. I think the more Force, the merrier, honestly. Me and the other person here who does Star Wars Doctrine with me, he's not on this specific episode with me today, but we discuss, obviously everything when it comes to Star Wars, and we were talking about Battlefront 2 and how we all have, if you play the game, there's tons of different, each character has its own Force powers, and some of them are ones we've seen, like Kylo has his freeze and Force pull, and he can pull people towards him. But there's also some that we haven't really seen in the actual movies before, like Luke does a Force slam where he slams the ground and everybody in a circle radius around him goes flying, and Anakin does a heroic might where he can kind of do the same concept. And so there's quite a few powers in that game that obviously they had to come up with so that the game was fun to play. But we were talking about which ones of these powers would you want to see in an actual movie. And Sidious has a dark aura where he can make there's like these clouds go around him and lightning and stuff, and I'm like, that's fitting for Sidious. It'd be really cool to see something like that on in a movie, and some of the Force slams against the ground and pulls and things like that. Those things would be really fun to see in the movies. We always get very limited, like nothing too extravagant with the Force, like a Force push, a Force pull here and there, but never just an all-out battle where people are just using Force like crazy. Majority of it is the lightsaber techniques, which, don't get me wrong, absolutely love that, and I hope there's just incredible fight scenes. Already look like in the trailer there's going to be some pretty awesome ones, but I would love to see more Force powers used, and I'm excited that they're exploring a little more of how powerful the Force is and where it can go. So yeah, this is the two questions that are most important for the Rise of Skywalker according to Chris Terrio, and love to hear what you guys think about them. If you haven't already, please like this video, consider subscribing, because
it is your destiny.